In Module 7, ACC inconsistent behaviors were mostly about absence, things the coach failed to do. PCC inconsistency is categorically different. It is not about what the coach fails to do. It is about what the coach actively does that serves the coach's agenda instead of the client's growth. As we walk through C3 to C8 today, hold this question. Whose agenda is this action serving? By the end, you will see a single route running through all 6 competencies. Recognizing that route is what makes you effective as a PCC level mentor coach. At ACC level, gaps are visible. You notice the absence. At PCC level, inconsistency is active. The coach is doing something that looks like coaching. The action may be skilled, the language appropriate, and still the doing displaces the client's agency. This is why PCC inconsistency is harder to catch. The question is no longer, did the coach do that? It is, whose agenda did that action serve? That reframe, from checking presence to checking orientation, is the core listening shift PCC level mentor coaching requires. The consistent PCC coach treats the session agreement as a living orientation that evolves with the conversation, not a contract established at the start and then forgotten. When the client's focus shifts mid-session, the consistent coach tracks it and asks, is this where we are going now? The inconsistent pattern, the coach sets the agenda on the client's behalf, holds the original topic when the client has moved on, or never revisits the agreement after the opening. The agreement belongs to the client. The inconsistent coach keeps driving toward the original destination after the client has changed direction. The consistent PCC coach in C4 brings genuine curiosity to who the client is, not just to what they are working on. Trust at PCC is expressed through quality of attention. The inconsistent pattern, when the client expresses uncertainty, the coach responds with their own professional experience. That response feels supportive, and it positions the coach's expertise at the center, communicating a subtle lack of confidence in the client. The PCC C4 trap. Responding to a client's insight by offering a better one. Technically engaged, fundamentally undermining. The consistent response is curiosity, not expertise. PCC presence means attending to both who the client is and what they are facing simultaneously. The consistent coach adapts when the client's energy shifts and creates space for the client's discovery rather than filling it with the coach's own analysis. Markers 5.2 and 5.3 work as a pair. Inconsistency appears when one is present and the other is absent. The coach attends to the topic but loses sight of the person. The session continues on topic. It has lost the human at the center of it. PCC presence failures look competent. Listen for who is actually steering. The consistent PCC listener uses the client's exact language to build the conversation forward and integrates what the client says into where the session goes next. The key distinction: a coach who listens accurately but doesn't integrate what they heard is not demonstrating PCC level listening. The ACC coach hears, the PCC coach hears and uses. The inconsistent C6 pattern replaces the client's language with the coach's preferred framing. Trapped becomes looking for flexibility. The reframe may be accurate, it is still the coach's word. Listen for whose language builds the next question. C7 is where PCC inconsistency is most audible. Marker 7.5, sharing without attachment, is the defining marker at this level. The coach who shares an observation and immediately follows with, "So what does that tell you?" has moved from evoking awareness to advocating a conclusion. The line, when a coach defends an observation the client didn't engage with, but I really noticed they have crossed from evoking into advocating. Share, release, follow, name the observation briefly. Wait, go where the client takes it, not where you expected. That 3-part sequence is what Marker 7.5 actually requires at PCC level. Competency 8 reveals whether the coach or the client owns the session's conclusion. The consistent PCC coach partners with the client to name their own learning and challenges thinking to invite deeper insight rather than accepting the first answer. The inconsistent pattern, the coach summarizes for the client, suggests actions, closes without checking what the client is actually taking away. This is the coach doing the client's work. Marker 8.8, challenging the client's thinking, often marks the difference between a good ACC session and a PCC level 1. Ask yourself, in this moment, whose discomfort is being served by the challenge? Now we can name the common root. Across all 6 competencies, PCC inconsistency shares the same source. The coach's expertise, instinct, agenda, or style enters the conversation in a way that displaces the client's agency. The coach may be skilled, accurate, well-intentioned, and still the client's agency is displaced. This is not about wrongness. It is about who is driving. PCC inconsistency feels like helping from the inside. Your job as a mentor coach is to hear through the polish to the pattern underneath it. At PCC level, the coach is often doing something skilled when the inconsistency occurs, asking a question, sharing an observation, closing the session. The inconsistency lives in who that action serves. Your feedback needs to name not just what happened, but whose agenda it served. That is harder than noting a missing behavior. It requires you to observe a skilled moment and ask, did this expand the client's exploratory space or narrow it? That is pattern level feedback. And pattern level feedback is what produces real developmental movement at PCC. 2 questions distinguish technique level from pattern level feedback. What should the coach have done instead? Produces technique level feedback, useful at ACC, insufficient at PCC, because the coach may change the technique and carry the same underlying pattern. What pulled the coach away from the client's agenda in that moment produces pattern level feedback. You are helping the coach see where their instincts displace client agency, even when the instinct looks skilled. Technique changes the next question. Pattern level inquiry invites the coach to examine what is underneath all of their questions. That is the depth PCC level mentor coaching requires. You now have the consistent and inconsistent picture across all 6 competencies and the root that connects them. Coach expertise becoming more visible than client agency. The next video takes this into practice. We will analyze the same coaching exchange twice. ACC lens first, PCC lens second, and you will see precisely where the standard rises and why. Calibration is the skill of hearing the same coaching moment and accurately determining its level of demonstration. Without it, your feedback cannot land where it needs to. That is what we build next.